Hey, 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 and welcome to Terri Messenger's Genius Zone. Well, do you have a body? Do you have an element where sometimes you feel anxious or perhaps uptight, or maybe just almost as if you cannot relax in yourself? It's like something is not quite right. If you have answered yes to these three questions, well, firstly, the body never lies. I know there is a book and it's called that. So I'm quoting that from the book that's written, The Body Never Lies. But what we are about to do is we're going to bring on a beautiful guest who is going to showcase the way she unlocks the blueprint of your DNA. Now, as you move into this sacred space, this beautiful lady, she is not only holding sacred space where the intelligence of the cosmos meets the wisdom of the body. Today, we tune into frequency that speaks not in words, but in feeling, in vibration, in cellular knowing. I want to introduce to you a woman that every woman wants to have in her corner. Her name is Jo Cooper. She is a divine translator of energy. She is a woman who is awakened, and she knows how to call in that beautiful, empowered part of yourself through gene keys, human design, and her natural gift of recoding DNA. And not only does she do this, but she channels. So she can read and channel the way that she is interpreting her clients through her own physical body. So with no further ado, I'd say grab your favorite bevy. We are at 5 p.m, so it is the happy hour here in Western Australia. But with no further ado, I bring you Jo Cooper. Hello, Jo.
Hello, and thank you very much, Terri, for having me here today.
It is an absolute pleasure, Jo, and I can't wait because you're going to be showcasing a little bit about your power at the end of the show. So, I can't wait. Now, in this show, behind every unique coaches, healers, and leaders brand, there is a dark night of the soul. There is always a story that brings them to their glory. Yours starts off when you're in a different role. You're in a different job, you get a headache. And this follows on with a skiing accident that becomes critically life altering. And then in that one moment, everything shifted. Would you like to share that profound story?
Yeah, so I suddenly out of the blue got a migraine when I was about 22, and that for me presented as constant head pain. So literally my head was hurting for the next 28 years. And then 10 years ago, I had a skiing accident. I lost a lot of blood, and very life altering. I think you might have disappeared, Terri.
I am right here, my lovely, and that was life altering. I love that. You're going to say life altercating or alterating, and you know what? I'm always about linguistic words and bringing whatever comes in. So yes, please continue, beautiful lady.
Yeah, so after this accident, and I was ambulanced back from the south of France where we were skiing. I found myself literally lying on the sofa month after month after month. And I was like, it's ridiculous. Why aren't I getting better? Because my physical injuries had healed. But I had no energy. Chronic fatigue, I couldn't do anything apart from get my lunch. It took me all day to prepare my lunch. I couldn't take the kids to school. So all of these things that I had to do in the past, couldn't do any of them. So very... It was extraordinary, and I just had this, and I remember it was a very particular moment, and I was like, I'm going to come out of this stronger than I went into it. My friends had started telling me that my symptoms, I had PTSD, But my friends were like saying my symptoms, because I'd got hot flushes, night sweats, terrible night sweats, brain fog, you know, chronic fatigue. They were telling me that it was menopause, and I didn't know anything about menopause. This was 10 years ago. I'm 54 now. And I'm like, I just didn't buy it. I just did not buy it. I'm like, it can't be. You know, an accident cannot have thrown me into all of this. And so, yeah, I knew I was going to come out of it stronger than I went into. So then it was just a case of figuring out how to do that. So I hit Google, as you do. And I started, I started researching and looking. But of course, you know, when we're ready, the teacher appears, doesn't it? You know that saying?
Yes, absolutely. And it sounds to me that you set a belief system up for yourself ahead of time. And that belief system was that you're going to come out of this much better than you've gone into it. And there's almost like a magical surrender in that moment. And that's what I call the sage brain kicking in over the sabotaging brain. That's like the judgment of, oh my gosh, where's my life going to go? What's going to happen to me? And you know so well, as a woman who is empowering so many other women, that, you know, we get ourselves into this rut where we sometimes can't even see a way out of it. And it's interesting how you came about and stumbled over the work that literally changed the trajectory of your life. I'm going to ask you this pertinent question. What was it for you that literally changed your life? What had the first biggest impact on your life?
It was the fact that I realized that all of these symptoms, and there were many symptoms, you know, because I still had the migraines from, you know, the constant head pain from before. It was really the fact that I suddenly understood that all of these symptoms were just my body's way of communicating with me. And so it was a case of taking symptom by symptom. Okay, well, what's the emotional stress behind this? Where is it stored in my body? Okay, let's release that. And that really is, you know, the crux of everything, because you know, any symptom, pain, ailment, you know, I truly believe that is our body's way of telling us something. And, you know, in terms of the big picture, it was very easy for me. I said earlier that, you know, all of the things I had to do, I couldn't do. I literally couldn't do. So, I mean, talk about a wake-up call. And so I started realizing, and it's not what we do. I firmly believe this. It's not what we do, it's why we do it. So I'd been in a situation, and I had a lovely life outwardly, don't get me wrong. You know, my life is beautiful. It was beautiful. It's a lot better now, but it was beautiful to the outside eye. But I was doing virtually everything because I felt I should do it. I had to do it. You know, I had to be the wife. I had to do the mother. I had to bring money in. I had to do this. I had to do that. Literally all this list of hats. And I was very much in my masculine energy, do. And I lost myself, you know. Somebody actually once asked me, you know, if you had a day to do something for fun, what would you do? And I completely drew a blank, and I'm not even joking. I'm like, well, I've spent the day in the garden. And she's like, well, that's a job, isn't it? And I'm like, well, I like gardening. She said, but it's a job as well. So I drew a complete blank, and that was a huge wake-up call. And that was all around this period, as I was realizing I was going to come out of it stronger than I went into it.
Yeah. Now, just enlighten me a little, because our speakers, or should I say our viewers, our listeners, and our speakers out there, because we have a lot of coaches that watch and tune into this show, they're going to be thinking, not all of them, but some of them are going to be thinking, what's this business that you felt it in your body, you knew you were carrying it in your body, and it was there, you know, inside your body? How did you know that? And how does a person tap into that element? So if I'm saying to you, right, I've got a little bit of angst at the moment, right? And I do, actually, truthfully speaking, but it's very temporary. It's also, I believe, a fire within me that is compelling me to act upon it. So tell me about that fact of the way that our emotions are trapped in our body. how would someone like, say me, for example, what would you say to me? How would you ascertain that pain and, whereabouts, and, whether you code it with color, or, you change it, or the dynamics? Can you explain that?
Yeah, so there's two different questions there. This moment when I knew that I was going to come out of it stronger than I went into it. No, I can't explain it. It just hit me literally, and it hit me in an instant. So I can explain it in by saying that it was just the divine, it was kind of a wake-up call. But that's harder to explain. The other one is much easier. So it's all about the feelings. And, I feel like I say this all of the time, and I probably don't, but your feelings are valid always, 100% of the time. Okay. Whatever you are feeling is valid. It's there for a reason. And, we're very much conditioned to cheer up or pull ourselves together, or, you're so lucky, or have gratitude, all of these things. And no, frankly, what you feel underneath of all of that is where the key is, because your body is feeling it for a reason, and it's feeling it to give you a message. It's communicating to you. So allowing your feelings to be there is huge. Literally just acknowledging that they're there will make a huge difference. So much difference to just, pressing on and carrying, I've got a busy day, can't think about that now. If you actually just take a moment, and it doesn't need to be ages, even just a couple of minutes. I do this all of the time now, but of course I've been practicing it for a while. I can be literally looking really busy, and yet I'm taking a moment to acknowledge how I feel up here, and in my body. So I can be outwardly moving, but I'm inwardly acknowledging. So acknowledging how you feel is huge, and then allowing, this is key, allowing those feelings to be there. We're not trying to suppress them, put them away. We allow them to be there. It's really important.
I love that. The art of allowing. Did y'all hear that? The art of allowing. And, also giving yourself permission. That's what I'm hearing. Giving yourself permission to know that it is okay. And also acknowledging exactly what's going on, because obviously that awareness is bringing you into that, space of halfway healed. So you've almost got to feel to heal. So what did you learn about, because you had a lot of pain, you were suffering pain to the point where you couldn't get off the couch and take your kids to school or pick them up. That's pretty serious, okay? Especially for a very vibrant woman like yourself. What was your pain? For example, what was the messenger in that? What was the message, and what was the pain there for?
So it was very much there because I spent my life first as an accountant, then I had a bricks and mortar business owning a kitchen showroom. I closed that as a family reason. My daughter was about to start school. I was about to have my third child, a decision I've never regretted, but it left this hole because I'd never in all my life aspired to be a stay-at-home mum. And I have no judgment to stay-at-home mums. That is absolutely perfect. And I actually spent quite a lot of time wishing I relished it, but I didn't. I lost my purpose. And, I love my children, absolutely. And I had a great time. And I'm very, very pleased that I had, those years to spend with them. But behind of that, I lost myself. And that's what this whole cataclysmic thing was all about. And it really opened my eyes to a different way of being, a different way of living. It really opened my eyes to the feminine energies rather than the go masculine. It's like, okay, what can we create? And I realized, and this is spanning sort of the last several years, the reason that I'm here to bring new things into the world. And I wasn't doing any of that, so my very purpose for being, I had no clue about. And, this was really very much, I see it as the universe just giving me a wake up call saying, hello, you've ignored me for so long. This is it now. It's time to go. Let's go. And it's very typical, actually.
Are you listening?
Exactly.
It's almost like that. It's like, are you listening? And I'm hearing that you were cracked open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
typical line 6 story in human design.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So the body is the oracle. The body
Yes.
tells everything. The body
Tells us
never lies. So obviously you began your work, and I can see how you've coded the gene keys and the human design and woven it into, the DNA, rewiring and repatternizing, and all the work that you're doing energetically with the human body. And, I'd love to ask you, what is it that you believe works for your clients that helps you to advance them very quickly? Because I know you can move people very, very quickly, and you are dealing with women that may be in that scenario where they're typically in their masculine energy. They feel that they're lost, they're lacking something, there's something missing in their life, and it's really having an impact on the way that they are operating in their business and in their health and in their lives. And then all of a sudden, Jo Cooper comes along and waves her magic, and you actually channel them in a very unique way. So would you like to open up the way that you channel, and what is that mysterious magic?
So what I love to do is, when I work with a client, it's all about the history. And my work is not about the story. It's not therapy. It's not about a conversation. It's not about remembering what happened. But what I like to do is to just get, just a list of things that have happened in your life. So childhood ailments, illnesses, traumas, accidents, all of these things. And that gives me already, because what I do is I actually feel things in my physical body. I think you said that at the beginning. So I sense and I see and I feel patterns. And when I work, I close my eyes a lot.
Is that hard? Is that actually, does that mean that you're taking them on and that's affecting you? Or is it a gift where it's downloading for the opportunity that you've got insight and discernment into your client's life?
Yeah, I don't take it on at all. And I've realized over the years that as an energy healer, I'm very unusual, because most energy healers are like very protective of their own. I mean, of course, I protect my own energy, but they're very protective of their space. They can only see so many clients. They find it draining. I have exactly the opposite experience. I can do a healing session on a client and I can feel as energized. This is standard. I feel as energized as if I've spent an hour lying down meditating and doing self-healing. It really, it almost feeds me. It's like it energizes me. There's no other way to say it. So yeah,
that's how you know. That's how you know when you're in your genius zone, girls. So yeah. When a person is operating in their gift and in their inborn talent, where they're thriving, they don't feel that sense of exhaustion. Like so many people, you can tell they're trying to be something that they're not. And they're paying the price because they're exhausted. They feel like they constantly need holidays. But you know what? I totally hear you in terms of you actually working with people energizes you and feeds your soul. And that is really spectacular. That is so very, very special. So what does that look like if a woman comes to you, and obviously you're attracting a lot of high level successful women, or women that are really aiming to live their best life. So they've probably got very high expectations, they're high achievers, and they reach this point where they're suddenly stopping and going, why is this not working? And then they're feeling that kind of block, and that that terrible feeling, that sinking feeling that affects all areas of their life. What does that look like when this woman comes to see you? What is the first thing you do with them?
So it's a build up, and so having seen the history, I have a really, really strong idea, and I don't like to have preconceived ideas. So this is almost, I'm contradicting myself, but that gives me a lot of ideas of the emotional stress that they're carrying. And then when we meet on Zoom, well, what I also do is I look at their human design and their gene keys, which gives me kind of like their energetic blueprint and their DNA programming. So it gives me many, many more clues. It's just a tool. I don't actually need to use them, but it's another tool. And it gives me a lot more clues as to how their energy is going to best serve them, how they're best going to move through life and what they're best going to do. And then, you know, when we meet on Zoom and have a chat, it's really apparent. And I think what you said about the exhaustion is key, because if we're feeling exhausted, then there's a reason for that. It's not actually because we're doing too much. It comes back to what I said before. It's why are we doing what we're doing? Because if we're doing the stuff that lights us up, it energizes us. When we're doing stuff because we have to do it, it depletes us. So it comes back to the why. And the answer is as we said at the beginning, you know, it's all stored in your body, and it's an accumulation. You know, things have accumulated from childhood through life, you know, and I'm talking about any experience that's slightly negative. You know, your body literally remembers everything that's ever happened, far more than our conscious mind's ever going to remember. And of course, beyond that, you know, our DNA, literally, we're an expression of our ancestors. You know, our DNA is programmed before we're even born. It's programmed from our ancestry, and we carry the memory on a cellular level of the experiences of our ancestors. So as we move through life, things get triggered. So, you know, it isn't even just memories in this lifetime and experiences in this lifetime. It goes much deeper. And I just pull all of that together. A lot of it I do intuitively, because I'm feeling and I'm sensing what's going on for my client.
Yeah, I mean, those little seeds of DNA are traveling through the womb of our mother and then through the womb. And they say we carry a lot from our grandmother, but it quite often goes back, they say, 7 generations. And I can remember doing my master's over in Sydney quite a few years ago. And I remember I was working on shame and guilt. And, you know, we went through, and I mean, you would understand this very much so, Joe, because you understand that quite often a coach, healer, or leader, sure, they may do a certification, and really what is doing there is giving you a kind of a structure and a roadmap. And a lot of times it's really about bringing conscious competency. You probably realized, oh my gosh, I've been doing this all the time. Well, in this specific methodology, I was dealing with this guilt and this shame. And I went back and I sensed that I was on a train. And I sensed that I was a very young girl, about 15 years old. And that's where the shame had come from. Now, that vision was just given to me from God. And, you know, it's amazing. It's very magical when you're doing the spiritual work, like with a coach like yourself, how that does come up. And then, you know, the getting to the crux of it, obviously we released it. We decoded it. We sort of, you know, pulled it like a weed and released it. And then later that night, I said to my mum, do you know anything about being on a train as a 15-year-old girl and feeling very lonely, and it's around guilt and shame? And my mother said something to me very profound. She said, Terri, that was my mother, because my grandmother had had her conceived at 15 years of age. And of course, you can just imagine what that was like. So she lived in the country and she was traveling into the city so she could go into hiding. And so it's interesting, it's interesting how we do carry this. And so, what happens? So when you're healing the physical symptoms and you're boosting their vitality and energy and unblocking that road from the business, can you share a story of, you know, what happens, what that looks like, and, you know, what the experience that you tend to take your client through?
Yeah, so, you know, I had a client who, she actually ran several businesses. She was really successful. The business that she was focusing on, the more one-to-one business, wasn't doing so well. And she was just really, really frustrated because she just got to that stage of her life where, you know, she'd done all this stuff. She's got the money. She's got the businesses bringing in the money. But she was really, really frustrated, and she was really questioning, you know, is this it? Shouldn't there be more? You know, and she wasn't especially happy in her family life. You know, the joy had just gone, really. And, you know, we started working together, and she'd had all sorts of incidences through her childhood. You know, I'm obviously not going to share any personal details, but she'd had all of this stuff going on, and, you know, was very much in this situation where she was working because she felt she had to provide for her family, and she'd lost her why again. And yeah, we worked, we unraveled a lot, but she had all sorts of things going on. You know, she was really frightened of driving on motorways. She wouldn't fly on her own. All of these things that, you know, we worked on, we peeled back the layers, because actually everything's linked as well. And yeah, now she's merrily driving wherever she wants to go. You know, she feels complete freedom. She lives up north. I'm in the UK in the middle, but she's bobbing down to London on a train or driving. You know, she can choose now because it doesn't matter. She doesn't need somebody to go with her to make her feel better. You know, she's flying to Europe because she can and because she wants to. Whereas before she's like, well, I can't do that unless somebody comes with me. So, you know, it was very liberating for her, to the extent that actually she's got a new little side business that she's just announced as well, actually. But it's changed her whole relationship with her husband, because I think what happens is when we're not doing things because we love doing them, we end up feeling resentful. And that resentment, because of course energy is everything, that resentment spreads out, whether we mean it to or not. Other people that we're living with pick up on that. And she'd got quite a lot of resentments towards her husband, which we've cleared. So, you know, even her marriage is in a much happier place than it has been for 15 years or so.
That's amazing. That's so good. And I mean, it's incredible that a person can come into a very highly gifted and sacred, you know, healer like yourself that does this divine work and unlock their prosperity as well and really unlock their wealth. What do you reckon? I have to ask you this question because I feel that this is going to be really, you know, people's itchy ears are going to want to hear this, right? But what do you feel is the culprit, you know, from what you've seen in women's energy blocks around money?
Most of it is, well, it's hard to make this succinct. A lot of it's conditioning. You know, we've got to work hard to succeed. You can't waste money. You know, you can't spend it. You know, money doesn't grow on trees. There's all of these sayings that we're conditioned with. But I think it goes even deeper with that than that, because as women, we very much would provide. You know, with a giver, aren't we? So receiving becomes harder for us. So, you know, this is where success and abundance become very closely linked. So success is really about the achieving and the receiving of the wealth, but the abundance is the ability to receive it and to let it in. And as women, we tend to, you know, provide more rather than just receive because we can, because we're worthy. You know, a lot of it comes down to how worthy we feel of receiving.
Oh man, you just hit the nail right on the head there, because this is all about spiritual prosperity codes right here. And that is really coming back to your divine self-worth and, you know, what you truly, truly, truly are inwardly thinking about yourself. But as Joe said as well, the conditioning, because I know, you know, someone very close to me is a multi-millionaire, but they were born in a third world country and they have that third world kind of mentality imprinted into their DNA. And even though today they're a multi-millionaire, they are, you know, totally in that fear. But somehow or rather, they let that go somewhere along the line, obviously, where they came into their wealth. So they must have developed their why. And really, I can honestly say, in hindsight, they did. I know they did. So they developed their why. They really came to know who they were, and they acted on their own, what was right for themselves. I think there's so many people that get locked into what society wants and what seems to be, the best fit. And they're afraid to make decisions. This person wasn't afraid to make decisions. They went out on a limb. They were a visionary. They followed their why. And that person's now become very old. So the why has kind of subsided a lot. And as that subsided, I feel that they've kind of regressed back into this mentality. And to be honest with you, Joe, I just feel like going and grabbing this person and shaking them and saying, what are you doing? Like, this is just not how it is. You've got so much abundance. But, yeah. What is it about us women that are like that?
That programming. So yes, they found their way and they got the money, they earned the money, but the programming is not allowing them to enjoy their wealth. So they're not spending it, they're not enjoying it because they're still sort of stuck in probably a fear of losing it all. If you've lived in a third world country, we don't really appreciate that in the Western world. But yeah, it's like they did half of it, but they don't actually feel safe to enjoy it and to spend it.
Yeah,
that's
quite incredible. So when you're decoding, you're really decoding the wisdom of people's own, their own body and what their soul is calling upon them to do. Exactly. And I feel that one of the biggest teachings I've got from this is that your adversity is not necessarily a tragedy. In fact, it can be your university. It can be the very essence of when destiny is knocking on your door, knock, 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 and are you prepared to listen? The other thing that I'm really holding on to from your teachings here is a lot of the art of surrender. And that means being able to sort of accept, okay, I'm in pain. I've got pain going on. I mean, I think it was incredible that you were able to understand that at such a key point of your life before you came into the conscious competency about the divine work that you do. No doubt you were always a gifted person. And the fact that you channeled, which leads me to this question, were there any clues when you were a child growing up that you were a little bit different?
There's nothing that, and I've thought about this, there's nothing that I can put my finger on at all. I think I've always been very careful to be, the good girl, the people pleaser, to keep everybody happy around me. But I can't help but think that there was probably something, and I've never been able to pinpoint it. Never. Up until.
So in your traits, in your personality traits, it feels as if you were always destined for the work that you're doing, and that you were called by the universe when you got that headache, and then you had that skiing accident. And it reminds me of a story where a man was telling his neighbour on a farm, oh, my son fell off the horse yesterday and broke his leg. And the man said, wow, that's bad luck, isn't it? And he said, I don't know, because he knew that sometimes, like yourself, those elements of what the magic is behind it. But there was a war after that. And guess who didn't go to war? His son.
That story is one of my favourites.
Is that right? Isn't it funny? I should tell
Seriously, I could finish the story for you. I love that story. Love it.
Well, I can imagine, because it's so suited to your, you know, your whole gift mix and everything you bring to the table, which I'm so excited, because now we're going to bring to the table something where I'm going to be very transparent here, up close, raw and personal with you, and you're just going to give us a little bit of a demo of what it looks like in the, I guess, you know, how you can kick off the road mapping of your client through Gene Keys. So I'm going to hand over to you, and perhaps you can just begin by explaining it a little bit just as you're looking at it, because I know you're looking at, it's almost like a spiral coding system, isn't it?
Yes, so we were going to do a screen share. I haven't studied this before the call, I must say, but we were going to do a screen share, but it doesn't seem to be working. So, you know, if you're interested in Gene Keys, it's a separate system to human design, but it kind of goes into in more detail, if you like. So if you're familiar with human design, the gates are called Gene Keys, and the 64 Gene Keys, we have all of them in our DNA, but depending on your Gene Key profile, it depends which ones are relative to various different areas of your life. So you can go into genekeys.com and you can put in, you know, your birth information, your place of birth and what have you. You can get this profile really easily. So what I'm going to do here is just going to demonstrate how much information that you can get for yourself very easily by looking at the Gene Keys, which I work with very intuitively. And then I go much deeper and I start actually working literally within the DNA strands, clearing the shadows of what comes up in the profile. So, but for now, so Terri, you were going to say to me, or tell me, because I don't know, you know, what is it in your life that you're perhaps struggling with or a little bit stuck with, or something that you're not, you know, happiest with? You know, give me some information about where you are and I can show you where it comes up in your Gene Keys.
It's easy, Joe. It is easy, and it's very public, so it's okay. I've got a whole TikTok account on this, and it's about my husband's story. So 12 months ago, my husband was a very gifted chiropractor, and we had a marriage that was beautiful and very special and very powerful, but it had deteriorated greatly for some strange reason. But what I didn't realize is that his body was breaking down through diabetes, and what they call the new diabetes 3, which is vascular dementia. Today, he is in a wheelchair and is non-verbal, and I am obviously utilizing all my resources to keep myself, you know, where I'm at. And, you know, my business has never been easier, Joe. What can I say? Somewhere along the line, I had to surrender, but I'm having to advocate for this man. And that can be, that right now is probably one of my biggest elements. It's the advocation for him to fight for his dignity and to make sure that he's given, you know, the opportunity of, you know, rather than declining because he's in full-time care, rather than just declining into old age and death when he's not that old, but, you know, the possibilities of him being able to have some dignity to find his life back again.
Well, I'm really sorry to hear all about that. That's a lot to cope with, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes, it has been. Very much so.
What would you say is your biggest challenge with coping with that?
Oh, I took a beautiful sigh just then. Thank you for that beautiful question. What has been my biggest challenge with all of that? Look, I've been through the whole acceptance. Why did this happen? What's the purpose? I can see, Joe, this is going to sound so weird, but he is living in a very strange, offbeat way his best life, because he has my attention. He has my love. We are more close than we've ever been. And he gets fed. He gets looked after. So there is an element of him. He's also treated in some ways like a king. So there is a very offbeat way. But my biggest challenge is just fighting for his ability to be able to have some form of quality life where perhaps he can do things like attend his son's wedding and, share the birthday with myself and him, who share a birthday and anniversary. And for me, I am not good at confrontation, Joe. I'm a people person, and I love people so much. And it breaks my heart to have to come up and say, this is wrong and this is what needs to happen. And, this is fresh. I mean, this is raw and fresh. So that would be my biggest challenge.
Okay, so just to say that, and of course I'm going to talk about gene keys, but what I actually sort of really do is shift energy, and there is energy shifting here for you as you're talking. Okay.
I can feel it.
I actually almost can't switch that off. I mean, I haven't, of course, tried to, but and now you're open to it.
I can feel that the energy. I'm not making this stuff up. I have been sitting with it here all day, and all of a sudden it's not there, and I'm like, where did it go? I just talked. What is that? Was that you?
That's what
you
happens.
Can't make this stuff up.
No, but it's why I don't actually like to do discovery calls too much, because I get people on a discovery call, the problem disappears while they talk to me, and they don't need to book my services anymore. It's uncanny. So I'm very used to this. But I just wanted to make you aware that it's kind of the essence of me, if you like. That's what's happening. That's what's shifting. And that's way more important for you than anything I'm going to tell you about your gene keys.
I don't know, Joe. I mean, I've had a pre-chat call with her, and I've gone on this particular podcast call, and I do not know. Apart from that, I do not know you, and I can say right here, as God is my witness, that energy has shifted.
And I can also say that I have got absolutely no idea about that story you've just shared with me. I haven't looked you up online, which I should have done. I've got no clue, no idea. So maybe you just want to sit with that and not go into gene keys.
I feel like that's it, but nobody else can obviously see it, but I can tell you, hearing is believing, and I can tell you right now, that's gone. That has completely gone. So maybe just a quick overview.
It's beautiful. Yeah, so when you look, because you're going to look at your gene keys chart, because we had a look at this just right immediately before the call, as in you ran it and then sent me a picture. So I'm looking down at a photograph of the gene keys on my phone. And what you basically get, there's all these spheres, little circles, and it's got things like your life's work and evolution, all these different names. But there's always sort of 3 words next to it. So the bottom one is the shadow. So I'm sure that you and everybody here listening is familiar with shadow work. And, when we're in our shadow, we're not in our strongest place. And then there's a gift, which is really where we want to be. But then also, which is less well known, there's another layer called a siddhi. Some yogis are familiar with the siddhi. A lot of people have never heard of it. There's no judgment there whatsoever. But the siddhi is like the aspirational. It's like what we want to aspire. And the way I love to use the gene keys is to just get a flavor for the words. So when you look at your chart, you'll see the words and you'll see how they resonate. So the one that's particularly standing out, Terri, for you, which one was it? I've lost it. Is you've got one of them, you've got twice. Now, this isn't unusual. We often have one twice. And what's important to say here is it's more likely to resonate for you than it will for me, because I don't actually have this in my gene keys. But the shadow is all about dominance.
Okay.
And you see, that's landed for you, because I'm obviously here live on, I don't know how many people are listening thinking, can I say that? And I'm like, but it always lands with the client,
There's going to be 150,000 people listening eventually, but obviously not right now. But once it goes to air, that's that, and maybe more.
Perfect. But from what little I know of you, dominance doesn't stand out, but you can see that, you can watch recording, that landed really strongly for you. So it's about moving out of dominance into synergy, and moving out of synergy into communion. So it's moving from the dominance. The way I feel this for you is moving into peace and acceptance. You mentioned surrender already. And that gene key comes up twice. So it's, if there's one thing to focus on, It's moving away from anything that feels like it's dominant. And it's not necessarily you being dominant. You might feel that you're being
I
dictated.
hear you. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. There you go.
Exactly what you're talking about.
There you go. So, and you know, anybody can do this. Anybody that's listening, you can look at your Gene Key profile, and you can just get a flavor for these words and think, okay, that's my shadow, but how do I move to the gift, and how do I move to the city? And of course, if you want all that reprogramming in supersonic time, then just give me a call, because that's effectively what I do. And
guys, I mean, I don't know how, that's like magic. That was magic, like right there. And so you would suggest to me that I need to, obviously, yeah, the dominance, I'm hearing that, and I need to move into that space and place of obviously synergy and being more with the peace.
But just, it might sound a small thing, but it's huge. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to look at it. You don't need to focus on it. But if you would like to, that would be amazing for you. Because this need, it comes back to doing everything because we feel we should, doesn't it? You know, it's a thread really that's woven through the whole conversation. It's like, because we're women, we should do this. We need to do that. They need this from us. So actually, you know, let's if nothing else comes from the conversation, let's just change that. If you would like to, it would be a great thing for you to do, but you don't need to.
Oh, what a beautiful thing to say. It reminds me of the fact that, you know, we are human beings, not human doings. And I believe we do hustle a lot in that masculine energy. And that's why I know my business kind of, you know, kind of like took off like a rocket. I mean, it was very good when I was in bricks and mortar, but it really sunk when I went into the online space. And interestingly enough, when I took my hands off and I moved into my, I guess there was some kind of receiving energy, if you will. I mean, things just changed and everything kind of evolved. And so I'm hearing what you're saying, and I think that is just so powerful. And Joe, from the bottom of my heart, I'm so grateful, because that feeling that's been stuck right here in my solar plexus all day, and we are, you know, we're after 6 o'clock here in Perth time right now, and so it's been a long day holding that. And I know some people might go, oh my gosh, I've been living with this for 2 years. I hear you. Some of you 5 years. And this is where, you know, when are you ready to meet your destiny? When are you ready to, you know, step into that essence of who you are and who you be? And I just want to ask you one last question to conclude the show. And it would never be fair to conclude this show without this question, because, you know, I can see that your divine calling and energy has really fanned into flames in the last 5 or 7 minutes. So in this energy, I would love to ask you, if there was one thing that you wanted to impart, there was something that maybe you got off the podcast and you went, oh, gee, I would really love to say that. And by the way, Joe's contact details are all going to be in the show notes. So we'll give you that space to be able to tell us. But is there anything you would love to impart that you feel that person that is maybe the original version of you, that if you could have been sitting on that couch when you were suffering, what would have you wanted to hear? What would be the voice of this wiser Joe speaking into her life?
Okay, it's one that I'm particularly careful of on social media, but it's a story of hope, isn't it? You know, there is always hope. I 100% believe that your body's communicating with you, but you know, more than that, we're biologically programmed. Our body wants to be well. Our body is trying to be well. Sometimes it just needs a little bit of help. But you know, the most immediate thing you can do, and the best thing you can do moving forward forever, is to acknowledge those feelings. Allow those feelings to be there. You know, it's all about inner power. I know it sounds a bit cliche, but it's not. You know, it's all about finding our inner power. It's letting go of the conditioning, the expectations from family, from, you know, people at work, from everybody around us. What do actually you want to do? What do you feel? What lights you up? Because when you follow what lights you up, your energy will increase. Doesn't matter what age you are, your energy is going to increase, and everybody wants more energy.
My gosh, that's simple and yet so profound. And if you are wanting, I mean, I'm a high level coach. I've been around for 17 years and I need Joe Coopers in my life. And so I feel that everyone, you know, we're always evolving. So if you are really wanting to shift that status of where you are now and you want to become, and I'm going to be careful in really just honoring what Joe has taught us here, to become the person that you were born to be, you know, get in contact with this beautiful lady. Where would you suggest would be one place, and we'll put everything else in the show notes, so where would be the one spot you would say is your favorite spot to really meet with people and DM with them?
Yeah, Facebook, I guess. Joe Cooper on Facebook.
Beautiful, easy. And it's spelled exactly J-O Cooper.
Yes.
Just like Gary Cooper. So,
Absolutely.
Joe, I just want to thank you so much for the wisdom that you've imparted. But I can't express the gratitude of what you've done for me in those very, very short minutes. And we didn't quite know that was going to happen. I didn't expect that to happen. I thought it was just going to be around the Gene Keys, but oh my gosh.
And I didn't even know what was happening for you or your story, but you're so welcome. It's been amazing to talk to you today. I've loved it.
Oh, thank you so much. And we'll talk to you really, really soon. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into this show. Jump into the show notes and contact this beautiful lady.
Bye.